And welcome back to Two Best Friends Play. No, SoapBox Speakers. That's the one we're doing.
That is the one we're doing.
It's not even Two Best Friends Play. It was like English Chaps Play, wasn't it?
It was.
That was ages ago.
It was a very long time ago. I'm amazed you remembered. Well, you barely remembered. You forgot the name of it.
I did. Well, that's just because I plagiarised it straight up from Two Best Friends. Anyway, now I've fucked it up. Welcome back to SoapBox Speakers, aka it's been fucking forever since we've done this, and I regret nothing.
True, yes. For our hardcore fans, all we can do is apologise.
All three of them.
Yeah, all three of them.
Oh yeah, also, we're sitting on a very rickety bench, so every now and then you're going to hear the bench go when I move my fat ass, so...
I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned the fat ass thing, because I was going to make a joke.
What about my fat ass?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I thought you liked my fat ass with PH.
I mean, I do. I love that about you. But I'm aware that every time I bring it up, that, you know, you're of two minds about it. Like, there's, you know, your sensitivity about what constitutes a real man.
Right.
And big arseness, you know, I believe is not necessarily in vogue right now in men.
I feel a little bit uncomfortable that you are implying that I have some idea of what a real man is. I'm perfectly aware of what a real man is.
Oh, yeah?
Because I am one. Just as I am.
Yeah, you are. Sexy, sexy man.
Oh, you know it. Anyway, wow, we're really on a positive vibe today. This is so unlike us.
Look at this body positivity that we're doing.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
You are just so gorgeous today. Oh shit.
I mean, if you can't tell, it's been a while since we've properly been able to hang out, let alone record a podcast.
Yeah, we've both been busy,
so
we've
missed each other.
I have missed you.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree,
Matt.
That
is a thing that I have done. I remembered that you were a being, and I did. I miss you, man.
I know. Which actually gives me an idea for initial topic.
Okay. Because you've done all the research.
No. This is actually a topic I haven't even researched. It's just you reminded me of it because of a conversation we had yesterday. Which is that, you know, what is a good strategy for meeting like-minded people and people you can be friends with, hang out with, wholesome friendships.
Oh, okay. So for a bit of context, I was talking to my very good friend Phoebe, and I mentioned to Phoebe, I was like, I made some friends last night, and then I went, what, like, as a curiosity, like, what approach do you have to, like, making friends? Because, you know, like we all have approaches, I guess, to, you know, asking people if they want to date and finding lovers, but, like, not a lot of people ever talk about, like, what your approach is to be like, hey, do you want to, like, maybe friend up and, you know, drink some 40s and watch some TV and, you know, bond platonically.
No homo.
Well, yeah.
Maybe homo.
I mean, to imply no homo is to rule that out, and I never want to rule that out.
That's a fair point.
So,
that's a fair shout.
You know,
but I never rule out my friends as a sexual possibility.
Like
it's solid advice from Jake there.
No, because homo doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It's just homo. It's like it's homosexual. So like you can be like, you can flirt with them and that sort of thing. And,
I
that
see.
Sort of stuff.
Yeah, like flirt with the gay.
So what I would go for is like low percentage of possibility of homo.
Yeah.
Like, so low homo. Homo.
I mean,
this
this kind of like is an accurate description, but with weird wording of basically my approach to when I'm around people, which is that
you always flirt with them.
I am incredibly flirty.
Yep.
And I have that as just an approach because it's kind of
I'm sleep with them all, you hussy.
I'm not an aggressive flirt. Let's just be clear on this. Though, you know, if they're into it, I might do.
Oh no! That reminds me of that conversation we had about hate fucking.
I regret nothing.
That will remain cryptic.
That will remain cryptic. That's not really a conversation I want to have right now.
No.
Gonna keep that as that locked door within myself.
Locked and bolted that door.
I've lost the train of thought now.
Sorry, man.
No, it's cool. Oh yeah. The light-hearted flightiness, because it's very disarming. It means that you're approachable, affable. You're not a threat. The other strategy I have is
I just smile.
Yeah, the other strategy I have, which I believe is becoming a Tumblrism, is you do. It's like rather than being self-deprecating, you're self-aggrandizing. But you're so self-aggrandizing, it's clearly satire.
Yeah. So like the whole idea is like rather than be self-deprecating, you're self-aggrandizing, and then you get used to it, and then you start to believe it.
An example would be
you
like
trick yourself into thinking you're not a piece of shit.
Yeah. Me and Jake are doing a podcast. I'm not gonna like
self-aggrandizing shit.
I hate to brag, but I think it's it's gonna make some waves. It's kind of a big deal.
Really?
That would be a handball. No, that's an example. Like,
yeah.
It's self-aggrandizing, but it's clearly satire because look at our view account.
Hey man, our first video has like 70 views now, and to be honest, that's like at least like a pub full of people. So
that's true, yeah.
You know,
so it's basically us in a pub talking really loudly.
I've never been more comfortable with an analogy before. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Right. In fact, like
Yeah.
Boom.
So how does one go about like separating the wheat from the chaff and finding
the wheat? I love that because you almost said the wheat from the chaff, and it's like there is no good.
Yeah.
You choose between wheat and chaff.
How do you go about separating the wheat from the chaff? I would suggest starting a podcast and putting your beliefs and ideas and thoughts.
And seeing who clicks with it.
Who clicks with it and who unfriends you. Yeah.
I mean, I think people have been doing that more with you than with me because I've already gone through a period of my life where everybody has unfriended me who is going to. So like everyone that's left either doesn't care or is going to be into it anyway.
Yeah.
So like,
but that's my point. It worked, right?
True. Which reminds me, we should hang out with Scott. We get that flipping mic off of him and start recording this in your office where we can put up some foam to make the recording sound better.
You know what, you're right.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Yeah. Next time.
Which
means this won't be happening again for another 6 months because we just will never get around to doing that.
What I would say is, whatever your interests are, join groups that focus on those interests. So if you like hiking, join a rambling group. If you are, whatever your interests are. Basically. I mean, ours is LARP, so we tend to meet a lot of LARPers.
Well, actually, LARP isn't all that helpful because you meet a lot of people who live in a lot of different areas, and it's not always that easy to hang out with them on a day-to-day basis.
This is an excellent point.
What I would also say is, like, a lot of this focuses on, like, a lot of the advice you can find out there focuses on people that don't really do anything, and there are a lot of people out there that do that. You know, they work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to work, and that is all they do with their life. And so the idea for them is like, go out and find something you would find interesting, do the interesting thing, and you will meet interesting people and you will make friends. But I feel like, what do you do if you've done that? You've gone out, you've found a thing called LARP, you've exhausted pretty much your possibilities through the thing that you're doing, and you've reached a point where you're like, well, yeah, I really like LARP, I get to meet people while I'm there, but there is all still a gap for like local friends or like that. And at that point, I would say, go and find something you enjoy, go and join it, and find you interesting people. Yeah, like it's literally that. That is the only way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy poetry, go to poetry nights, which is what you started doing recently.
Yeah. I am now writing of the poetries.
Yes.
In fact, I brought it with me.
Oh, fantastic!
Afterwards,
we'll have a little poetry jam. Well, because we talked about this yesterday. Me and Jake might start going as a duo to poetry nights and doing some slam poetry.
Yeah,
which could be.
I feel like I'll solo it to start with. Introduce myself on my own. You can introduce yourself on your own, and then we can just bust that out.
And then we start doing some collaborative
six to a year down the line.
Yeah.
Bust out some collaborative works, and everybody goes, "Wow, that's amazing!" And we'll be like, "Yeah, boy." And all those poetry tricks want to sleep with us, and we'll be like, "No." Celibacy helps with our art.
No, I didn't use this poetry to get into your pants. I used it to get into your head. Oh! Scroobius Pip drop. Anyway. Listen to Scroobius Pip if you have not listened to Scroobius Pip.
I mean, like, I listened to him and I enjoyed him.
Yes.
And then I listened to him a lot, and then I realised that, like, actually a lot of his stuff is a little bit kind of like whiny.
Yeah, I get you.
So like, there's a lot that he does well, but there's also like...
Isn't that the Taylor Swift phenomenon?
Maybe.
You know, where whenever she's happy and she releases happy songs, people fucking hate her.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like they don't like her material, and then when she like goes through a bad breakup and writes a lot of songs about like that are alluding to that, or like clearly about that, but not necessarily directly.
Fair.
Like suddenly she's great again. People just like Taylor Swift miserable.
Poor Taylor Swift.
I know. Which is...
I mean, actually, I don't really feel that sorry for her. She must have an awful lot of money, and she could do whatever the fuck she wants with her life. So,
can she though?
Yeah.
Like, because
like she's out of the limelight for 3 to 6 years, and everybody's gonna forget who the fuck she was.
Oh, that's a fair point, I suppose.
You're just left with money.
I mean, we're saying all
and
this.
Your voice.
We're saying all this from and your voice. We're saying all this.
Beautiful face and your unattainable body.
Your perfect hair.
Your gorgeous eyes. Phone me.
Yeah. Taylor, call me. I want your next breakup album to be about me.
Fucking hell, man. Yeah, Taylor, don't call me because your music career will go down the pan because you'll never break up with anyone again and you'll always be happy.
It's at moments like this I wish I knew...
That's a good pickup line.
It is. It's moments like this I wish I knew your mobile number to heart so I could just say that. Say your mobile number and pretend it's my own. Like,
don't give people my mobile number when you're like hitting with them because like I don't want to have to deal with your fallout. So like you said that like you'd totally be up for like dressing like a baby and spanking me, and I'd be like, for fuck's sake, this is another one of Matt's flirty conversations, isn't it? Jesus.
That is eerily accurate. Who have you been talking to? No, seriously, you've been talking.
I mean, like there are places I could take that joke, but I feel like we've reached the point where it's still vaguely appropriate.
It's crested.
It's crested, and like it's going to go downhill from here. So I'm going to say nothing. What were we talking about?
We were talking about making friends,
like
wholesome friends, not those shit friends that just like rob you of your energies. Your precious, precious energies.
I do need my energies right now.
Yeah.
I need to conserve them and hoard them.
Yeah.
I've actively been doing that, in fact.
Yeah, run on.
Yeah. So I met this guy last night. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
No, last night, the night before. So, oh my god, he might watch this. Let's do it anyway. So I went out and I was hanging out with these two people, and I was kind of like making friends with them because they were in the poetry scene, and I was like, you know, you've got to get to know people to be able to do that. We were walking from one pub to another, going through a dark field. There was a person coming towards us, and I was like, whoa, man, that's a bit creepy. Like, you can't really see them. And I was like, that'll break the ice a little bit because we are just like people meeting in the middle of the night and people might be scared.
In a field, yeah.
Yeah. And hearing somebody go, oh, man, that's really creepy, will make you feel like, oh, you know, this person feels the same way as me. Yes. I don't have to be scared. And then one of the two people that I'm out with decides to go, let's rape her.
Wow.
Yeah. And so...
For those of you that don't know, don't do that.
Yeah.
Literally ever.
Like, it's never okay. It's never funny either.
No.
I say that. Like, if it was a... because I had this conversation with this guy for 20 minutes and he was like, no, it's just a joke. And I was like, the only place I could maybe see this being a joke and being acceptable is if it was a comedy sketch that was staged and recorded, because then... Nobody's actually been hurt.
Yeah,
but
Jim Jeffries is a prime example. Some of his routine is that kind of thing.
Yeah. But this is actually a woman in the middle of the night who could be terrified by you saying that.
Yeah.
Who could already be terrified because three men
are
walking towards her in the dark.
Like...
Right? And you decide to make that joke. So I kind of tried to tell him that it wasn't okay. He got a bit aggressive, and then later on I was like, look, man, I can tell you're like stubbornly defending this because you don't want to admit you're wrong, but like, and that's cool, just take it on board, accept that it was, what you did was wrong later and never do it again. And he was like, yeah, alright, fair enough, maybe it wasn't appropriate. And I was like, nah, it wasn't, well done.
It's not maybe, it actually fucking wasn't, dickhead.
And then he was like, I appreciate your candour, and I was like, I mean, sure, I didn't appreciate your joke, but whatever.
Yeah. How was the woman?
She just walked past and went on.
Fair.
Yeah, so
probably had headphones in. Probably couldn't even hear him.
That was my thing. That was my hope. I really hope she had headphones in and just couldn't hear what we were saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, not going to be. I say not going to be hanging out with them again. Not going to be hanging out with just them again.
Yeah.
Like, if they're at a poetry night, I'll probably say hello.
There was an interesting thing you said yesterday, actually, when you were telling me about this, where you said, like, when he made that joke, you were immediately angry because it's like, you've put me in this situation where I've now got to deal with your shit. Yeah. And I've got and I don't know how this woman's going to respond. And you made me part of this. Yeah.
And I was like, and I don't want to be a part of this. Like, because I said this to him. I was like, look, man, I'm a fucking 6'5" bloke, and I'm built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
I scare people by existing.
Yes.
And I can't have that.
Yeah.
Because like that like it, you know, I struggle enough just as myself scaring the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And I hate doing that.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I want everybody to know that I'm a big fluffy teddy bear and I'm never going to hurt anyone ever. You know? Well, I say that.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where you've done that have sprung to mind, but yeah.
Occasional spanking.
Well, I was thinking more like, just some advice if you ever meet Jake, don't ever rest your balls on his shoulder.
Look, man, that guy fucking deserved it, alright? Okay, so to tell that story, we were at a LARP and I was sitting in a camping chair and I was a little bit drunk. And this guy called Jake Annery, who Matt hates irrationally.
Wow, are we just going to drop his name?
Oh shit, we just dropped his name.
Yeah.
Alright, fuck it. Do you want to edit that out?
I don't know.
Are you comfortable with that?
Who's going to listen to this?
I mean,
how many of them can there be in the world? I'm guessing a lot.
Anyway, well, like, he's going to know it was him anyway, so it's just whether or not he's comfortable.
Yeah, it's also,
we'll message him afterwards and we'll be like, look, we dropped your name in the podcast, is that cool?
Right, and also, in the podcast, you've also just said, I irrationally hate him.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to that, just to put some stuff into context.
Do you want to do that right now?
Yeah, okay, so back in the day at this LARP, I did have like, you know when you're around someone, and, like, just their very presence fucking annoys you. That like looking at their like look this is who I was then. Okay, I'm not saying this is who I am now, and I'll get to that. But this person, for some reason, just fucking irritated the shit out of me. Every time they talked to me, fucking pissed me off. Everything coming out of their mouth annoyed me. Like I was offended to have to breathe the same air as them. It was a really kind of powerful emotion. Like, hate is hate, right? And I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying, like, I had a real a rational dislike of this person. That was the case. And like every exchange I had with him, I was clearly annoyed with him. And I think he was aware of this. And funny enough, not so long ago, I say not so long ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, he just messaged me out of the blue because like he's not in our same social circles anymore because of what he went on to do. But he messaged me out of the blue, like, and said a bunch of stuff. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it made me realise that, damn man, you were acutely aware of the fact that I found you really annoying. And I also think he'd gone through a process himself where he was aware of that. And I don't think I was the only one who was irritated by a lot of his shit. And I think he'd figured that out, and like he'd worked on that aspect of himself because it was abrasive. So, and like the person who he is now, it became apparent in that exchange is not who he was then. And at that point I was like, you know what, I no longer hate you. Like, you're alright. and good luck to you, man, more power to you.
Yeah, this is completely beside the point that my opinion should have been fuck all to you, but whatever. Like,
anyway, completely.
Yeah. Anyway, so this guy rested his balls on my shoulder.
He was blind drunk.
He was blind drunk as well, and he came up behind me and he rested his balls on my shoulder. And I did not react well to that.
Well, actually, first of all, you did. The initial reaction was fine, which was like,
my initial reaction?
Could you please get your balls off my shoulder?
He should have fucking listened then.
Like, yeah. Like, you gave fair warning. My take on it is you gave fair warning.
And then, as far as I'm aware, I stood up and turned and pushed him over in one fluid motion.
Yes.
And he went flying backwards.
He fucking did.
Because he was drunk and he just stumbled back. He was off his balance and he fell over into the dirt. And I sat back down and I finished my drink.
Yes.
And Matt went, that wasn't cool. And I think my response was like, fuck it, or whatever.
Well, you actually didn't say anything. And there was technically a ref who actually saw that as well.
Alright.
Chris.
Okay.
Who was there. And he said, who basically just said to you, could you, like, never do that again? Like, I understand why you did it, but never do that again, please.
Alright. So, like,
he read the situation fine. Like, how he handled it, I agreed with. Because, like, you were both quite drunk.
Yeah. I understand why he did that.
Yeah. I get it. I've been there. It's fine. Like, he's not dead. Yeah, so that
he could have been.
He's not dead or injured, I should say.
No,
because he was so drunk.
He did manage to snap his own ankle falling down the cliff at BDH though.
Oh god, yeah.
That was grim.
It was
fucking grim. Anyway, sorry, Jake. I love you. You got a great name.
Great first name.
Yeah, we should probably go and edit that out.
Okay.
Might edit out his second name.
Yeah.
At least.
Or just
sexy time on my screen. So Matt occasionally gets distracted by the screensavers that come up on my computer, and that one was of two lesbians having some sweet sexy times. And again, I can only say that there are like literally about 8,000 of them, and I'm not going through 8,000 screensavers just to take out the occasional
I'm not
sexy
asking
one.
you to. And again, like last time, it was literally just me leaning over and having a glance.
And then you laughed!
No, and then you went to talk about it, and I laughed.
Yeah.
Because I knew you were about to mention it. Fuck's sake, Jake.
Fine. God,
Every
geez.
time.
Do you know what really worries me, though, is that sometimes occasionally when I'm at my mum's, I just leave it open and downloading stuff, and I'm like, let's just occasionally flick through some sexy time, and yeah, my whole family's seen it.
Well, mother, this is what I'm about, alright?
That's what I'm about, Mum. The sweet lesbian sexes. I'm a woman.
Right.
Anyway, I made friends with the lesbian couple, actually.
Yeah.
Talking about sweet lesbian sexes. Oh, God. I'm not going to keep those friends very long, am I?
I hope they listen to this.
No, they won't listen to this, no.
Oh, I learnt a new word yesterday. Their beard. I didn't realise this was a thing.
Well, I really hope they don't listen to it now. Fucking hell. Matt didn't know what a beard was, which was like for. I think actually like it's more common like the other way around. So a gay man will have a straight woman who hangs out with them.
Yes.
To make everybody think that they're straight, and that is a beard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. So Brexit.
Yes,
Let's talk about Brexit.
There was a massive march yesterday.
There was 700,000 people.
Oh yeah, the numbers are changing all the time though.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's fucking Trump's inauguration all over again.
Oh,
the crowds weren't that big. They were the biggest they'd ever been. Blah blah blah. I just don't care.
yeah, can we just not leave? That'd be great.
Well, I mean, okay. So for those that don't know, the march.
No, wait, shit. No, we need to leave so the house prices drop.
Yes.
Then we need to go back.
Then
and not lose the NHS in the process.
And not join the Euro, but unfortunately we'd have to.
I mean, at this point, I'm comfortable joining the Euro.
I'm not.
Why?
Because you don't want a centralised bank that has to service 28 member states, all of which have different operating economies. You want each one to have its own currency with its own central bank to act as a lender of last resort. Because we're not all Germany.
Alright.
In a nutshell.
Fair enough.
The scale, the central bank system and the scale of it just doesn't work. I mean, because the fact, like, if you have another situation like the housing crisis, you've got a single central bank that has to generate enough money to bail out potentially 28 countries and their respective banks, or whatever finances you're having to bail out, whether or not they'd be banks or like insurance companies or financiers. Like a good example right now would be the financing system in the US for second-hand cars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a massive glut of shitty financing derivatives that have come out of the used car market and the credit agencies there. So like basically anyone can get credit for a used car. And the same problem that they had with mortgages. There were loads of shitty mortgages entering the financial market as investments.
Oh, and now there's loads of shitty mortgages.
Yeah, so the revenue streams from the loans for those cars are unreliable. They're subprime.
Well, like the second-hand car market in the US is actually quite weird anyway. Like it's very different to the UK.
Yes, it is.
Because like you don't get cheap cars over there. Like the cheapest you'll get is like 3,000-4,000.
Yes.
And I mean you can get cheaper, but they are literal hunks of shit.
Yes.
And it weirds me out. That weirds me out a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's also down to like the size of the vehicles, like material cost. I think is higher,
and the fact that if you're driving it fucking miles.
Oh god, yeah, that's another point.
There is no like people around town.
Yeah, because it's all suburbs and shit.
It's also the country's massive.
Yeah. So that's a thing. That's why I don't think joining the euro is a good idea. I think the euro was a mistake on behalf of the EU.
Fair enough.
That's just me. I mean, like, also it's...
Well, no, it would have made sense if we just made one country called the European Union.
I mean, that is the end goal, but we're not at the point where we can have a single currency because our economies are not intertwined enough for that to work.
True.
But yeah, I do agree with you, and that is the overall plan. I think they introduced the euro too soon, if they want to do that.
Maybe.
So yeah. Anyway.
Well, we opted out, so
we did.
We don't want that.
I mean, just to be clear, as membership deals go, Britain had the best one. Straight up had the best one.
Yeah. It's because they needed us because we were still a superpower.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
It's because of all the social credit. It's because of the soft power credit that we had to do with the founding of the EU.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, soft power is the basically social credit that countries have with each other. So China, for example, is doing really well when it comes to its soft power because whenever there's international meetings, they'll send 30 or so delegates to represent China, and they will wine and dine other delegates and be very kind of helpful and open in deals and negotiations. Whereas if you look at America's soft power, they'll maybe send 5 delegates and they're proper cunts.
Yeah.
Right.
In America.
So on the diplomatic scene, China is
America's diplomacy comes in the form of bombs and tanks.
No, okay, this is a misnomer. Like the facade, like the face you see of like international politics, like what Trump tweets about countries, is very different to what goes on in embassies and diplomatic functions.
True.
Those are two very different things, two very different worlds. I have a sneaking suspicion most... I say that, most US diplomats... I believe Trump is still has yet to assign enough diplomats to all the embassies around the world, because he's had his thumb up his arse regarding that one. Oh, sorry, his shit-covered thumb on his phone, tweeting.
I like it.
I'm into it.
It's good. It's accurate.
And I think that's where the confetti spelling
came from. Prime Minister. Oh no, there's more shit smeared on my phone.
Anyway. So the referendum march. So what they were marching for was they want a second referendum, or depending on
where
how
we can all go. No, we don't want it. Thank you.
Or depending on how you want to view it, a third referendum, or even a fourth referendum. Let me explain. So. In 1975, there was a vote as to whether or not we should leave the EU. So there's the first referendum, which was lost.
Well, actually, the first referendum was the vote to go into the EU, surely.
No, because
there
wasn't a snap election for you to vote in a party to support that claim.
Oh, okay.
So the ruling party at the time decided that, I believe.
Fair, but we had one in 79. Did you say 75?
I think it was 75 or 70. Yeah.
75. Okay.
It was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Then the next one was the Brexit referendum, and then the next one after that, you could also argue, was the snap election that Theresa May called, which she ultimately lost.
Yeah, well, she didn't win. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well,
I'm not sure if you could say that she lost, but she said, well, she definitely lost, but Labour definitely didn't win.
I'll tell you who won.
So,
I'll tell you who won. The DUP.
Oh god, yeah, they really did. No. But let's also look at the precedent for ignoring referendums. So, like
the precedent.
Precedent.
Sorry, I heard president.
Oh no, precedent.
Yeah.
Because we talked about that before,
yeah.
where Ireland had the referendum about whether or not to make abortions legal, and they all overwhelmingly said yes. But lo and behold, the government said, no, it's silly, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's just advisory.
We won't make abortions legal and make everybody safer, but we will leave the EU and make everybody infinitely worse off.
Yes. Infinitely. Phrasing.
No, I'm comfortable with infinitely, because it will eventually lead to catastrophe, and environmental collapse. No, that's going to happen anyway.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Infinitely. Yeah, all right. Look, I've been doing a lot of poetry, all right. So like you're gonna.
So use of words is not important to me. Is that the argument you're making?
No. So like what I'm trying to say is like poetic license may be more of a factor in how I speak generally because
Yes. Okay. I'll
dramatising a lot of shit.
I get you.
Yeah, I'm a poet. I need to get a fucking beret and a little fucking cigarette. Like.
Cigarillo. Gua cigarettes. I only smoke gua.
Exactly. It's on point. But yeah, no, but I do feel a little bit out of place with the poets I've met so far because I'm the only one that's like
doesn't do drugs.
Like, they're all. I'm like, nah. Man, I drink nothing but milk and water, and the only drugs I have are caffeine.
How avant-garde and bohemian of them.
Yeah, well.
Talking about that one time they did absinthe with wormwood in it. Oh my god.
Well, we haven't had that conversation yet, but they did.
Sorry, not absinthe, absinthe.
Shut up. It's funny, but shut up.
It's also eerily accurate.
No, they were talking about experimental drugs.
Yeah.
And they explained it to me, and they were like, yeah, man, it's just like a community online that just takes drugs, alters like one bond or one atom, and then sells it on. And I'm like, yeah, but doesn't that like fundamentally change what the fuck that thing is?
It can do.
Because like he was talking about, like he had one that was a powder and he snorted it and he gave himself chemical burns up his nose, and his mates ingested it and started throwing up, and I'm like, you are really smart.
Yes.
And then his mate was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure because of all the experimental drugs I take, that's why I talk slower now. And I was like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, keep out, mate.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. Just keep talking slower and slower until maybe one day you can read poetry at a pace that means people can listen to it.
You're going places, mate. You're going places. Oh, sick burn.
It was pretty fucking good.
It was good.
I'm absorbing all of that fucking hate burn energy, you know?
Yeah. You don't even need to do drugs now. You can just...
Yeah, no, legit, I don't. I was hanging out with the two people that were high yesterday, and I was just like, yeah, let's act like fucking idiots. This is great.
Let's rape
You don't care, because I'm high.
Sorry,
no.
yeah,
Oh, Matt, can we... No. I don't want to...
That was not one of the contexts where that was okay.
That was one of the contexts where that was okay.
Cool.
It's just, you reminded me of it, and I don't...
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's still... I'm still like...
There was a guy in the... this kind of hippie avant-garde shit.
Right.
Nah, actually that's...
You're well into that, so...
Yeah. I do enjoy that scene.
Yeah.
So I was at a festival. And
some hippie avant-garde dickheads.
This hands down is the most hippie festival I've ever been to.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I loved it. I had a whale of a time. Dropped some acid. It was great. Don't do drugs, kids. But they also had lectures and talks from lots of different people. Now, some of it was super like post-colonial spiritualist cack.
Right.
But there was this one guy who is, I think by trade, he's a chemist.
Right.
And he was looking at the history of psychedelics on the scene and doing an actual proper talk on it. Now, what he mentioned a guy in America who basically got funding through some university, and he'd partly lied as to what he was doing, but also hadn't lied because he was like the way he'd framed it technically fit. It's just once the university found out what he was doing, it became this huge thing and very controversial. And what he was looking at was making derivatives of particular known psychedelic compounds like DMT and psilocybin in magic mushrooms and lysergic acid, LSD. And he was modifying he was finding patterns in how molecular structure determines whether or not a drug is a psychedelic, and he generated like hundreds and hundreds of different compounds, all of which were psychedelics that had different properties. And not only was he doing that, he was cataloguing the method of for producing them. So very basic compounds that anyone could get hold of, how to mix them and titrate them so that you could generate these compounds. And there is actually a book which I can find out the name for, but I'm actually not going to name drop because it's like literally if you buy this book, it's a step-by-step guide, and technically it's a legal book that you can buy. It's no longer in print because no publisher will touch it. There are hard copies out there going for, last time I checked, about $1,500. Guess why?
Yeah.
And this book basically lays out how to make all these things, and there are hundreds and hundreds of different psychedelic compounds in there. And a lot of people who really get into like the use of psychedelics tend to get this. It's one of those things that kind of gets handed around at these kinds of festivals, little photocopied copies
Right.
of like some of the stuff in this book. And like people have been exploring them and going through them and kind of cataloguing their experiences, and this is like a subculture within like some hippie communities where they're looking at this. A lot of them like are trained chemists.
Oh my god, they're all so fucking stupid.
Well, like in the case of this, like the safety, like he also was very conscious of safety protocols.
Yeah, right.
Like my point here is, if you're gonna do it, this is the way you do it. But don't do it. Unfortunately, also because of that, and because of how easy it's become to learn these skills of how to do titrations and modify compounds, you are seeing a lot of drugs enter the drug scene, which are modified forms of ecstasy. So things like M1, Meow Meow, all of these were derivatives from ecstasy, and they are untested and unregulated. And yeah, there are some real dangerous risks in it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So this guy talked about that, and like he talked about he also like put the use of psychedelics into a cultural context and historical context. So things like pretty much every culture in history has made use of some form of drug that modifies cognition. And most have, if not all, have also had some form of psychedelic. So if you're wondering like what kind of examples, that alcohol would be an example, caffeine would be an example. In the UK, there used to be a strain of cabbage that was a psychedelic that has now been bred out, no longer exists because of farming.
Oh man!
And that was used regularly.
Oh man!
By like the Celts and stuff.
Like psychedelic cabbage though.
Yeah. That'd
have been dope.
I know, right?
Like, hey. Fucking fry up stir fry with a little bit of psychedelic cabbage.
Stir fry. Have a stew, nom 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 nom.
Yeah, balls. Man.
And it, like these.
Okay, look. If I was going to think psychedelic,
it would be cabbage.
Right. Like hands down, I could make little cabbage wraps.
That's hilarious. Anyway, like, how did we get onto this from Brexit?
Because the only thing that you can do in the face of Brexit is take hardcore drugs.
You're right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, that's not true, kids. You don't have to take drugs. In fact, like being able to like face the harshness of reality without coping mechanisms is a brave and a noble
pursuit. I mean, I should point out, those kind of days are behind me. I don't do recreational drugs anymore.
Aww. That's a shame, because you're so much more fun when you're on drugs.
I know, right?
That's not true. It's not true. I'm lying.
Remember that time I turned up to work?
Oh, Christ, that was great. Have we already talked about that?
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Alright, fine.
I'm just thinking of you long term. If an employer listens to this podcast, it might not look good on you.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, okay, so there was this point where Matt was like tripping balls on acid, and he was lying on the beach. And you just kind of got to the end of your high, and it had been a pretty...
No.
Oh,
I'd gotten to a particular point in the high.
Right.
And I'd had what I would argue is an erotic trip.
Right. And your first thought was, I want to go hang out with Jake.
After that, I was like, I wonder if Jake's at work.
And I feel kind of honoured that I'm like your
post-coital go-to.
Yeah, post-coital. I'm like the equivalent of like the drug version of the post-coital cigarette.
Yeah. That's accurate.
Yeah, like you'll calm me down.
Yeah.
So, but I totally wasn't at work. I was just hanging out, and I happened to be up really late. And you came in, and yeah, it was funny.
I rang you up and I was like, "Hey man, are you awake?" And you were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Do you mind if I come over?" And you were like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Just to warn you,
I'm a bit high.
I've dropped acid." And you were like, "Are you gonna be okay getting here? Like, are you safe? Are you okay?" I was like, "I'm fine."
No man, man, don't worry. Look,
I know.
You know, running down into town with 2 hatchets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that happened.
So to tell that story, Matt phoned me up and went, how likely is it that someone has a real gun
in Canterbury?
At which point I went, I'll be there. 5 minutes. And I may have, in my naivety of youth, picked up a couple of weapons and started running.
Which you just had to hand.
Well, look, I'm a camper, all right. Like, it's not unusual to have a couple of
to have 2 hatchets.
Yeah.
Let's say that I've got 2 hatchets.
Yeah, dickheads. Got like 3 knives at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
Just in case one breaks.
Yeah.
And a spare one anyway. I've only got 2 actually. I've lost one.
Anyway, story time.
Can't remember now. Oh yeah, you told me off. That's basically the whole story. You were like, what are you doing, you fucking idiot? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm just coming to try out.
I was just curious as to whether or not you thought it was likely someone had a gun on them in Canterbury. The reason being was because
someone had a gun on them in Canterbury.
someone was representing themselves as having a gun on themselves.
Were they lifting their shirt up like proper gangster stuff?
Yeah, they were. It was tucked into the front of their fucking trousers. And I was just like, that's a fucking BB gun in my internal monologue. But then there was a part of me that wasn't sure. So me and Jake had just had an argument. So I'd left and gone to a pub to have a drink.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell. We've had a lot of arguments.
We have. Let's not talk about it.
What's the next topic?
Are we done with Brexit?
I don't know. Are we?
Oh, right, okay. So I listen to LBC a lot, which is a London-based radio station, and it's talk radio. So they have topics, and the host will have phone-ins. I've called into it a bunch of times myself, and I was listening to that on the way. I was listening to that last night, and there were a couple of interesting points made. One was that some of the argument now is that one of the callers who'd actually been on the march framed it like this, which is that in the time that's passed, a fair few people who were elderly and voted to leave have died. And a number of people who were young and did not want to leave but couldn't vote and had no say are now eligible to vote. And the response from the presenter was that, well, you could say that about anything. Why not do that with any general election? Why not do that with any decision? And the caller didn't respond to that because for me there's this really simple answer to that, which is that okay, fine. If there was a referendum on whether or not we go into or leave the EU every 4 years, that argument would hold, but it doesn't here. The long-term ramifications of this are far greater than who is running the government for the next 4 years. Like, how badly can a government fuck up in 4 years, compared to how badly could this fuck up the younger generation for the next 40? Right? They're 2 different things. Anyway, so that was just a point I wanted to make with this conversation. I thought when I would bring it up, I really want to make sure I say that.
Yeah.
I think I've already stated my position on this one. I kind of just want Brexit to happen. I just want it to happen because
if you're a firm fucking believer in the inquisitorial angle of, you know, like, the strength is born through fire.
You shat your bed, now sleep in it, you pricks.
What do I do now? You sleep in it, pig.
Yeah. And there was this great guy. There was a guy who did this opening salvo, but unfortunately got cut off because they then had to switch to another topic, and I was really annoyed that they cut him off because he was doing really fucking well. And what he was saying was how angry he was at the political system and the political classes at the moment because they have completely abandoned their duty of care to the voter base.
They have completely.
And just switched over to this popularist political strategy.
Yep.
And the person he holds squarely responsible for that is Boris Johnson. And it was like one of the most astute analysis of like the current political system I'd ever seen. And also he was currently studying to be a lawyer and was doing an EU law module, which is
useless now.
He was saying was probably the densest part. You say useless? No.
Oh, even more useful.
For the next 10 years, anyone who's got any qualifications in EU law is going to have a lot of work.
Yeah, true.
Like once we leave, because there's going to be a lot of shit going on because of cross-border agreements and contracts that need rewriting, resetting.
Oh, fuck no.
Holy shit. Right, next topic.
Hit me.
Right,
Do
I
it.
was introduced to an interesting take on gender fluidity
Alright.
this week.
Have we already broached this subject?
We have, but this is new. This is something I hadn't heard of, and this
cool.
This is a take I'm intrigued by.
Alright.
So there is currently in Parliament a debate going on regarding trans rights and how one goes about changing one's gender, and what the legal requirements are, and like what testing should be involved, if any. Right. So incidentally, there's been some excellent stuff done by the BBC on this subject, and for the first time, I saw a fantastic debate between a radical feminist, who basically radical feminists, for those that don't know, in this context means feminists who are not convinced that the experiences of a trans woman are necessarily equivalent to the experience of a woman, and it doesn't necessarily fall under to use a radical feminist expression, the umbrella of womanhood. Right.
Well, that sounds like exclusion, and that falls under my umbrella of bullying.
Yeah, right.
And they can fuck off.
Well, I mean, like
as a white man,
as a cis white male.
Yeah, I'm comfortable in my ability to have the privilege to tell them to go fuck themselves.
Okay, this is fine, but so there's that radical feminist, and then there was a transgender woman who made an interesting point, which is that, well, I'm just a woman. I'm not a trans woman, I'm just a woman.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought it was quite a good point.
Yeah, it is a fucking good
point. And it was the best debate I'd seen between those two parties, which didn't descend into deplatforming, didn't descend into shouting down. It was an honest, sincere exchange between two people expressing their views. That's a rare really thing. Fucking well.
That's a rare thing.
Yeah, and it was just a beautiful exchange. And like, learnt a lot from it. This has got nothing to do with gender fluidity, but I just kind of wanted to put it into context as to why it came up, because this debate is going on at the moment, and this is perhaps something we can talk about in a minute anyway. But here's the thing. There are schools of thought within people who discuss transgender issues that basically say that you only have the classification of trans as opposed to cis if you also have gender dysphoria, which is where you feel that your body's sex does not represent your gender. Right. Okay. So, if you are a trans woman, you have male genitalia. You don't have breasts. That is, if that affects your quality of life, so that you feel you aren't able to represent yourself as you feel you are, or know you are, that can cause a psychological condition called gender dysphoria, similar to body dysmorphia, except in the case of body dysmorphia, that's unrealistic expectations of one's body that ultimately lead to severe, I'm talking about people with anorexia who, despite being thin, nonetheless perceive themselves as fat. The way they're seeing their body is faulty. Yeah. So that's a different thing to someone who feels that their body is a certain way, should be a certain way, but it isn't. Yeah. So one is a distortion of reality. One is reality does not meet my internal image. Right. Yeah. That's the clearest way I can think of putting it without So this is not saying that being trans is a form of mental illness. Just to clarify. So, with that said, if the argument is made and the point stands that in order to identify as trans, you have to have gender dysphoria, that means that gender fluidity is not trans. It's an aesthetic. It's a state of being.
Okay. So what? Because they don't feel like their body doesn't represent them. They feel like their body does represent their sexuality. Yeah. They're just gender fluid.
No, they're sex, not sexuality.
Sorry. But then, like, what if they're gender fluid, and so sometimes they feel like it does, and sometimes they feel like it doesn't?
Okay.
What
What do they do about that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. Because I don't believe any of them are. There's no one out there who identifies as gender fluid who is seriously considering each year changing their sex. Right?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know enough.
And if that person,
and
if that person does exist, you could probably make the argument it's something like surgical addiction rather than.
All right. I mean, like, I've always found that to be a really interesting one because because it is a privilege of the times that we live in that we get to make this choice, right? So, like, if you are trans, you get to make the choice of, do I want to modify my body to fit my mind?
Sure.
Because, like, we didn't that is a very, very recent thing.
Yes.
You know, it's not something we've been able to do up till now, but there have been an awful lot of trans people throughout history. And, like, yeah, it's a big choice to make. It can be very dangerous.
Yes.
It can have an awful lot of complications.
Yeah, there are risks associated to it. Yeah,
and I wonder how much of it is to do with the way society treats people based on how they look. So like if society had less of an emphasis of you must look a certain way in order to be able to be treated a certain way. For example, you know, the heavy stigma on men to never show emotions and to always be blah, you know, and then you know, so if you look like you're a man, you get treated like a man. If you look like you're a woman,
you behave like a man.
Yeah,
you treated like a man as well.
Well, yeah, but like it's
hence the masculine behaviours and feminine behaviours.
Well, no, it's literally down to look. It's not behave, because if I get treated,
if a man cries, that is not considered masculine behaviour.
Yeah, and they get ridiculed for it.
Yeah, that's a behaviour.
So they still get treated like a man.
Oh, I see. Ah, okay, yeah, I'm with you now.
There we go.
Yeah.
So like if you look like a man, regardless of how you act, you get treated like a man. So if you cry, you get ridiculed. If you act camp, people go like, "Well, you fucking fag," right? Like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you're a woman and you act bossy and you throw your weight around, you get called bossy.
Right.
You know, you get told to behave in a more feminine way. You know, you get told to shut up. But if you act
if you're a woman who is bossy, you are considered abrasive. If you're a man who's bossy, you're considered assertive.
You consider a man.
Yeah.
Man. And
right.
and I'm wondering how much of the desire to change one's body to fit how one feels in their mind is because you need that connection, and how much of it is based on the societal pressure to look a certain way in order to be treated a certain way.
This is an interesting line of reasoning, but I would argue this describes people who identify as gender fluid, not people who are trans, because trans is not about desire. Trans is about innate knowledge of self.
Right.
I would argue.
Okay.
Because there's a difference between your body not matching your body's sex not matching your internal sex. Because we all have that internal self-image, right?
Right.
And
I mean,
this is but for most of us who are cis, this isn't something that we consciously are aware of.
Right.
This is the only way conceptually that I feel I've got any kind of grasp as to what it must be like.
Yeah.
Right. So that internal image is different to what the external image is. In people who are trans.
So, you know, you were talking about body dysmorphia.
Yes.
That is, in my head, I am a very, very, very skinny.
No, because they when looking at themselves still see themselves as fat, despite the fact they are skinny as a rake.
Right. Okay.
That's a distortion of reality. It's the where that distortion is coming from is different. There's an actual manifestation from perception within perception that they are different. It's not that someone is looking at themselves in the mirror who's trans and seeing that they are. lost my train of thought there as to how I was going to represent that, and I don't think I can get it back. Sorry.
It's alright.
So, like, hang on.
Alright, you're right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way of phrasing this, and I'm actually trying to see if it actually is going to help saying it.
Okay.
Let's just leave it.
Fair enough. It's interesting that you say that though. Like, so we all have an image of who we are in our heads.
Yes.
And it's just that their body doesn't match that so drastically that it is a constant, like a thing that they have to change. Like
those, gender fluid people.
No, trans.
Well, for some it is something that they have to change.
Yeah. Because I know an awful lot of trans people who have gone, actually, do you know what? I don't need to do the surgery.
Yes.
You know?
But they will dress.
Yeah.
To fit their gender, right?
Yeah. I get that.
And they'll carry out less extreme forms of body modification. So if you're a trans man wearing a
had a bra.
Yeah, no, trans man wearing a wrap.
Yeah. Or the opposite would be.
Yeah. And in some cases even wearing a prosthetic bulge, that kind of thing.
I mean, what, don't we all do that? Covered socks.
Pads crotch. Ooh, cottony. So anyway.
So soft.
So, they are representing themselves as they wish to be seen. Yeah. Which is fine.
Oh, yeah. No, but, that's why my idea, and that's why I came from the perspective of, how much of this is, we are treated the way we look. So... And if we lived in a society where that wasn't the case, so everybody was just treated as an individual, which is probably impossible, but whatever, let's say hypothetically, would there be as much of a desire to radically change our bodies through surgery in order to fit?
Unfortunately, sorry, finish your point.
Yeah, to fit. Fit,
I mean, there is this is one of those gender studies things that is, I think it's been stamped out now, but there was kind of this counter movement basically saying that this avoidance of naturalistic arguments. So there was this anti kind of science move against sexual dimorphism,
right,
as a thing in biology, as that was felt to be like a cis-normative patriarchal concept rather than actual science.
Sexual
Explain dimorphism. It. So sexual dimorphism is basically saying that the sexes are different on a biological level, and that there are extremes and tendencies towards within those two sexes that means that they are different. To give you an example, a man's grip strength, how hard he can grab something, always tends to be higher than an Olympic level female athlete in a field where high grip strength is important. That's because of high testosterone levels.
So the average man grip strength is higher than an Olympic. Really?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
And that's without training. That's a man who doesn't train. His grip strength will just be higher because of how testosterone has affected muscle growth, right? And that is a dimorphic difference because we are a sexually dimorphic species.
Yeah, because there are fundamental differences.
Yeah. And that's a consequence of long-term hormone exposure and things like that.
Right. I'm not saying we're not all born equal. But we're not all born equal.
I'm just saying we are different. The sexes are different. Yeah. And to try and pretend otherwise is pushing this idea of, well, actually, ultimately, we're all genderless, and that anything that says otherwise is a social construct that's set up by cis-normative values.
Well, I'm not trying to say we live in a society where we're genderless. I'm just trying to say we live in a society where the expectations we put on people are based on how they look. Or what gender they are, so you don't expect someone to behave in a certain way, because an awful lot of again with my trans friends, an awful lot of their moments where they're everything's going better now have been moments where they have looked male enough or female enough to the point where somebody treats them like a male or a female in public,
right,
without knowing who they are,
right.
And that's a point where they've
not been misgendered.
Yeah, and that's when things start getting better.
Yeah.
So I do feel so much of this is just to do with how society treats you, and you say you have this image in your head of who you are, and it doesn't fit with your body. I think it's more of a you have this image of this person in your head, but nobody treats you like the image you've got in your head.
The only thing I would say in response to that is that those trans friends of yours then have to go home, get into their pajamas, and be reminded when they look in the mirror that that's a facade.
Maybe.
Because the internal image, because the internal image doesn't match.
Hell's Angels are after us again.
Their the external image that they see.
Right.
And again, I'd like to bring personal accounts into this. And I've got trans friends who have said that there are great moments like that. But then on the flip side, you've always got to go home and then be reminded, or every time you use the bathroom, be reminded, or things like that. So those moments are great, but you still have that shock factor of but I'm still this, and it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And that for me is where that internal self-image idea comes from. This is not something I've heard argued in like trans communities. This is just my understanding of it. Right?
No, I get you.
And I've done it that way, and I'm framing it this way because it's the only way conceptually I can really get to grips with it. Because I'm not trans, but I'm trying to understand what the daily grind must be for a person who is.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear here. I'm never going to fully understand it, because that's not a shared experience.
No, neither am I. Right? To be fair, I think that's quite clear.
Yeah.
But I understand it enough to be respectful.
Or try to be anyway.
Do my best to be. Oh.
Well, here's the thing: the fact that we've now suggested that I've now suggested that gender fluidity isn't necessarily trans.
You're getting in trouble now.
Yeah, how many people are going to get annoyed at that?
I don't know. The 12 people that listen.
Yeah, no, but like if you were to say that, or if you were to say, or let's take it from a radical feminist perspective, I'm not entirely sure that the experience of a trans woman is comparable to the experience of a woman.
All right.
Is that not a fair statement?
I don't know.
I mean, let's just be clear here. I'm not convinced that the experience of one woman is ever the same as the experience of another woman.
I was going to say, because if we take the perspective of intersectional feminism,
this is why I like intersectionality as a way of framing this.
Then the argument is nobody's experience is the same as anyone's.
Exactly.
So there is no way of being able to nobody comes under any umbrella.
Yeah, so it's a moot point.
Yeah. But there are umbrellas, on the flip side of that,
On the flip side of that, there are I like being able to categorise things and pigeonhole things, because it allows you to then analyse them.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
But then there comes the issue of once you get rid of, if you look at spectrums within gender fluidity, then you've got groups that are arguing that they identify as an animal or a concept or a colour. What is that? And does that identity have the same validity or same importance, or should receive the same amount of recognition as a trans woman or a trans man or non-binary? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. But then this all again boils down to the importance that society recognises who you are.
Okay, so how much should society recognise that someone identifies as a wolf?
Well, I would argue that all that matters is that the people that you have in your life recognise that
but should someone who identifies as a wolf have the same legal protections when it comes to employment and their ID as trans men and women?
Well, that's a very interesting fucking point, because when you talk about the job market and capitalism as a structure that we live within, that inherently expects you to mitigate and mask elements of yourself in order to fit within your work environment.
Yeah, and the balance of that is always in to and fro.
So my argument there would not be, yes, people who identify as wolf or people who identify as trans need to have the same rights as need to have laws written in that give them the same rights as any other worker, because I think the laws technically, the laws are just workers' rights, right? We're talking here.
Well, here's the thing: how does any letter addressed to that employee? What pronoun does that employee use? I'm talking specifically here of if someone identifies, if someone's a trans woman, then and they've expressed their preferred pronoun,
Yeah.
that should have a legal protection. Okay?
Right.
They should be allowed to be addressed and spoken to how they wish. My question is this: should someone who says they identify as a wolf and say that their preferred pronoun is what's a gender neutral?
Well, I feel like we lost something when we didn't, take on the
Your
idea
Majesty is
the
your
idea
preferred
of
pronoun.
comrade.
Huh?
I think we lost something when we didn't take on the idea as everyone, just refer to everyone as comrade. Because that would have solved an awful lot of these fucking problems right there and
Yes,
there.
but it then doesn't allow you to express your individuality, and now we're getting onto.
But
this is for me. This is where that whole snowflake.
But
thing
you're working a job to make money, so you're not allowed to have individuality. Like that's the whole point of it. You are a cog in a machine. This is capitalism. This is what we live in. And if you want a different fucking system, get a different fucking system. But otherwise,
Jacob,
there is an element
you've come
of like
full circle.
Yeah,
You've realised
I know.
it is all about economic striation.
No, I already
Fuck
knew that.
Yes!
I already knew that, Matt, and you already knew that. You just wanted to fucking twist the story so that I would say it as well. So you fucking wrote me into this fucking argument.
No, I didn't make you say that. You said it, dickhead.
I know, baby. But like, yeah, that would be my argument to it. So there is like.
So ultimately, it doesn't
and
matter.
obviously, when you're talking about a position of privilege in this scenario, what you're talking about is my position of privilege as a white cis male is the fact that I don't have to hide as much when I go to work.
Yeah.
But I'm still hiding shit.
Yeah.
And I recognise that if you are trans or if you are a fucking wolf, right, you are hiding an awful lot more in your day-to-day life, doing a job, or you're not hiding it and you're suffering because of that.
Back to the question at hand, though.
But what question?
So, if someone identifies as a wolf and wishes to be referred to as their Majesty, should that request have the same legal protection as someone who's a trans man or woman? Are we saying they're equivalent? Because I don't think they are. Because, like I said, I don't think gender fluidity actually is trans. It's an aesthetic.
I wouldn't call the Queen Your Majesty, so I'm not going to call a fucking weird wolf.
Right, so it shouldn't have the same legal protection.
Like I think there should be a law that comes into place that says that there is like a third pronoun which is they,
right,
and and if you don't fit within he or she, you can have they.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're getting to the point where I could be like, well, actually, do you know what? I feel like I'm a sir, so I want everyone to refer to me as sir.
Yeah.
Or master. And at that point you're just getting a bit fucking weird and it's getting a bit kinky and it's all getting a bit funny. So I like comrade. I know you're laughing, but I genuinely appreciate comrade, because you say you don't get individuality with comrade, but you don't get individuality if you need to figure out what pronouns they need to know anyway, because you don't know them as an individual.
Of course you do.
Comrade.
No. The point is, it's coming from the individual. They are telling you that this is how they want to be referred to.
Right.
So that's where they're expressing their individuality. That's where that comes from.
All right. In which case, why should there be laws centering around social interaction? Because that at that point,
because there already is.
Well, yeah, I know, but there are extremes that you can take it to. Like you can't.
This is my point.
You can't make
back
people,
to the question at
hand.
hand.
You can't make people be nice. Like be good human beings, like by putting laws in. Some people are just going to be shit.
So what you're saying is we don't actually need disability discrimination and racial discrimination legislation because people are still going to do it anyway.
No, we do.
Right. So,
but people are doing it anyway.
So do we need to legislate?
That is my point.
No. So do we need to legislate?
The only laws that are important are ones you can enforce.
Jake, you're skirting around this question. I don't understand what's so complicated about it. The question is, do you legislate to the same level for a person who wants to identify as a wolf and be referred to as their Majesty, or as a trans man, woman, or non-binary, gender-neutral person?
Yes.
You do?
Wife, yeah. Fuck
okay.
It. Why not?
Right. That to me is
insane. Let them have it. I don't give a fuck.
That to me is insane.
I'm not gonna, nobody's gonna fucking arrest me if I don't call them Your Majesty, so yeah, fuck it, put the law in. Just do it.
Do you need me to cite legal precedents where people have been misgendered and people have been arrested for it? Because
really?
that is a thing?
Wow, well, in which case, maybe we shouldn't have the legislation.
Right.
Because that's just being a dick. And you shouldn't get arrested for being a dick. Because if you get arrested for being a dick, it all depends on...
You should simply be ostracised from social communities that dislike you because of the content of your character.
Exactly.
Which has got nothing to do with...
Because as soon as you start, legalising what you think is a dickhead and making it
legislating,
law... then it's just... Fucking hell, it's hard to fucking explain, but,
So, is gender fluidity a trans identity?
my god. Like... I don't know.
It's an interesting topic, though, isn't it?
I don't know, Matt.
I don't know either. Just to be clear,
I have got to the point where I treat the people I meet on an individual basis, and if I feel like we're going to be abrasive, I fucking leave.
Yes.
So, or if I feel like, which means probably I avoid people who are radical feminists or who are kind of radically fighting for trans rights, because I know that they don't need to radicalise me because I'm not a part of the problem, but
Are there arguments that, like, if you are apathetic towards their issues, you are part of the problem? I'm pretty sure I've seen that meme.
Am I apathetic?
Well, if you're not getting involved, yeah, that is apathetic.
Oh, okay. Well, there's only so many fucking problems in the world, and I can't fucking deal with all of them. Like,
I mean, I don't disagree with you, right? I don't disagree with you, but it requires you to say that is a fucking bullshit argument. It requires you to say that, I'm sorry, gender fluidity isn't trans and shouldn't be recognised under the same legislation, and I'm not being transphobic for fucking saying that.
Okay.
Please don't dox me. Right? Like, or, I'm sorry, I'm not convinced that the experiences of a trans woman are the same as the experience, comparable to the experience of womanhood as radical feminists frame it, and I'm not entirely sure that trans women...
And you're not entirely sure that fucking matters.
And I'm not entirely sure that trans women should necessarily be put in the same prisons or be allowed into protective spaces for women who are escaping domestic abuse.
Yeah, that is a fucking... it's fucking shit's grim all over, man. Like... Because
you're saying, like, how does it actually impact day-to-day life?
When do we fucking lose the idea of fucking common sense? Oh...
Well, I mean, first of all, let me be clear. The debate I mentioned earlier between the... I don't know why I pointed at the TV there. The debate I mentioned earlier between the radical feminist and the transgender woman. The transgender woman, going back to the point she made, was, well, I'm not a transgender woman. I'm just a woman. Right?
Yeah.
Like if she turned up in a what are they called? A shelter,
right.
Where women go who are escaping domestic abuse. If she, heaven forbid, was a victim of that,
she should be allowed in.
Should she be allowed in? And I would argue yes, because it's clearly what she's there
it's common sense.
Yeah, right. Whereas
if someone's being sent to prison and suddenly becomes trans in the 2 months leading up to their prison sentence, do you then send them to the female prison?
And also,
probably not.
And also, this was a really good... I think it was a point made by Dara O'Brien, which for me kind of was the nail in the coffin for it, which is that, look, are we seriously saying that doing this means that men can be better rapists? Because men have already been doing a pretty good job at that, or as it is.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't think this does help them, and it offers a whole lot more protection to a group of people who up until now have had very little protection. So there. But then here's the thing. What happens when you start bringing things like gender fluidity into it? Where one day you are a man, one day you're a woman. Or whatever the fuck you are the next day.
Yeah.
Right? What are they? Do they have that same right?
No.
Right. So they are different and they don't have the same legal protections.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Right. But by simply saying that, there
from
will
my
be,
position
there will
of privilege.
there will be groups within the LGBTQ movement that see that as wrong, and that that's really bigoted and transphobic.
Okay.
So you're saying it's common sense, but you're basically saying to these people, your value system is clearly bullshit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of prison is fucking bullshit anyway.
Well, I mean,
this comes down to these are problems that have much bigger, the problems are much bigger than the symptoms that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, there was
because with prison, there's so many, first of all, why the fuck do we have prisons where it is possible for one person to rape another person.
Yes.
Why don't we fix that?
Yes.
Why don't we have prisons where it doesn't matter what gender the people are in them, because nobody's going to rape anyone.
Because no one has the opportunity.
Because nobody either has the opportunity to do it, or everybody is like psychoanalyzed and vetted, and so the instance of it is much fucking lower. Or people are brought back into society like they're supposed to be in prison instead of just being punished. Because punishment is stupid.
Yeah.
The punishment has already happened. Like, they have been caught. They've been ostracized from society. They are like, they've gone through this legal system. They've been told they're wrong, and either the punishment has already worked and they've gone, wow, I'm never going to do this again, or they need to be brought to a point where they realise what they've done was wrong and that they need to now fucking
and they can become functioning members of society.
Yeah, which is fucked, because we need to, capitalism is fucked, and the idea that you can't be an individual at work is fucked, and the whole idea of social, fucking like emotion. What was it? Emotional.
Intelligence, well-being.
No, emotional labour not being recognised as a part of some people's jobs, so they get paid shit all money, but they're fucking destroying themselves emotionally. And that not being valued by society. The fact that the arts aren't valued by society, despite the fact that that is literally the only fucking reason we have for existing for a lot of people. We as an entire species have just lost sight of what's important. And that's why we have so many troubles. And I'm really glad I get to be at the top of the shit heap with my position of privilege. That makes me feel great. I'm so happy that I get to walk around on the streets where there's nothing to do but go and drink in pubs, but I get to do that and feel safe. That makes me feel really nice. Yeah, I get to go to the pub where everybody just fucking drinks and doesn't have a nice time and fucks each other to forget about how shit life is. And yes, Matt, I'm not okay, and no, I don't know what to do.
So welcome to the dankest podcast so far. That was good, man.
Nah, yeah.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything because it was just kind of like there was something occurring there, and I didn't want to interrupt it.
Yeah, I get you. But I haven't really kind of been able to put it into words. But yeah, I've now realised where my because this whole because whenever anybody says you're in a position of privilege, I'm like, yeah, I understand I am, but why do I not feel like I am? And that is why, because my position of privilege is to not be at the bottom of the shit heap. I'm at the top of the shit heap, but nonetheless I'm still.
Well, I would argue you're not actually at the top of the shit heap because you don't necessarily have the same economic advantages people higher up do.
Well, I'd say that's out of the shit heap, if that makes sense.
Oh yes, right. Yeah, but then surely you're not in a position of privilege. This goes back to my point. The overarching. Yeah,
but when all you see is shit, of course I am.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes. Yeah, you're right. Because we don't see the ones out of the shit heap.
I'm out of the shit heap. I get to look up. That is my privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. Wow, that was actually really good. Mic drop, man.
Well, we can end it there.
Well, we could, but
you've got more points.
I do.
Oh, cool. All right, we better make this a long one. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll leave that because there's nothing really to be added there.
No, I don't know how we got to. Did that go from Brexit, or did we bring up a new topic?
No, I brought up.
Okay, cool.
I brought up whether or not gender was a valid trans.
Yeah, that was it.
Should be considered trans, or if it should just be considered like a state of being or an aesthetic choice.
Right.
Rather than an identity.
Well, what's your next point?
Tommy Robinson in the house. So a couple of things have happened.
Yep.
He got released.
He did.
Which I think we mentioned.
We did.
Released as in on bail because the case was being appealed, right? The findings of the court were being appealed. So, in the interim, Tommy has been a busy lad. He's not gone to work, got a job, returned to his plumbing profession. No. He's been busy in his really important activism. He's written a book, cashing in on all that social credit he's gained with his supporters.
Literally cashing in.
Yeah. He's been visiting our troops, having photos with them.
Great.
Getting them into trouble.
Great.
Do you know about this?
No.
So some young, they're not cadets, but then they're like
Hitler Youth.
New soldiers. I don't know what the term for this is, right? But I think they're soldiers to be. Soldiers in waiting.
Right.
Like,
Braves.
yeah, right. They were doing their training, I think.
Okay.
And there was a photo that he shared on social media, which was a group of young cadets or soldiers. I think they were actual soldiers.
Oh, what are these actual cadets?
No, not as in like. It's cadets when you're at barracks and academies training to be soldiers.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah, I think they were cadets.
Oh, right, okay.
So, group of like 15.
In which case, I retract my Hitler Youth statement. I thought you literally meant like kind of like joining the kind of like.
Oh, soldier wannabe. Right. Okay. Yeah.
No. These are actual cadets.
No. These are actually Her Majesty's soldiers.
Right. Okay.
In training, right.
Her Majesty's cadets.
Well, this is the thing. Like,
Her Majesty's youth.
Okay, so there was a photo that did the rounds, and there was the MOD is investigating it because extremism is not something that they support, and they feel the argument is being made that these soldiers brought Her Majesty's military into disrepute potentially.
Wow.
Right, which is valid on the contracts that they sign, and that you pledge. I have a strange feeling you pledge like an oath of allegiance to the Queen. I have a strange feeling that is part of what you do, right? So you technically, when you become a soldier, represent Her Majesty.
Representing.
Right. So you were expected to conduct yourself within a particular code of conduct, as any job really does require you to conduct yourself, but it's particularly framed around the fact that you're representing the Queen. That's like that whole loyalty thing.
Ugh.
So it's being under investigation, and the question is it right that these soldiers are being investigated just for kind of possibly suggesting they supported this guy, this political activist? I have mixed feelings about it, but what it reminded me of when I first saw it was that video that Prince Harry shared when he was in his squad. Do you remember this?
No.
They were at the airport waiting to go to Iraq, and he did a pan shot of his squaddy mates, and then zoomed in on one of his fellow squad members, and said, "This is our Paki friend." Wow. Who was at the other side of the room. Right? Wow. And he was of Indian or Asian heritage.
Right.
Right. So, for those of you that don't know, Paki is a racial slur. It used to just mean Pakistanis when they moved over in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, but true to most racism, it's been
it's
spread.
It now just means any Asian look.
Anyone who's vaguely brown.
Right, yeah. So it's a racial slur. And Prince Harry, did that. That was the thing. Yeah. My question is, where was the investigation into Prince Harry and whether or not he was bringing Her Majesty's army into disrepute? When did that happen? I don't remember that happening.
But it is his army.
No, it's his grandmother's. It's not his.
Yeah, but come on, man, he's part of the family.
Oh.
I mean,
if that is not nepotism.
No. I mean,
of an order of Donald Trump's family working in the White House, I don't know what is.
Sorry, but yes. Where have you been?
I just wanted to say, where was the moral outrage there? Just saying. I hate to be arguing Tommy Robinson's side on this one and those soldiers, but where was the outrage there?
Because, like I said, probably got squashed. They probably had a lot of conversations within Her Majesty's house, where they had chats with people at newspapers and went, Don't
publicise this.
That'd be awfully kind of you if you wouldn't publicise this. What? Here's money.
What?
Money.
I don't even think it would be here's money. It's
I'm the Queen.
It's literally we trust you will handle this appropriately. It would be one of those open-ended things of we trust you know what line you're potentially crossing if you do publish.
Yeah, that's the point where you just get your balls out and you flop them onto the fucking newspaper, right? And you rub them about, and then the story appears. The picture of your giant bollocks right next to them.
Giant splayed bollocks that you've depressed with a perspex plate so that they really splay.
Yeah. You did shave beforehand, but there is just one air. It's just all the way across it.
Right.
Anyway.
So that occurred to me. In other Tommy Robinson news. He allegedly, and I use the word alleged because I've yet to find another source confirming this, and the one source I have is hiding it behind a paywall, and I've only been able to read the first 3 paragraphs. But apparently, Tommy has dismissed his team of high-priced lawyers.
Oh, I just made a horrible noise. You might want to start again.
So apparently he has dismissed and is no longer making use of his team of high-priced lawyers that all his supporters so generously gave for him to have. Because, according to him, he wants to get himself sent back to prison to continue raising awareness about this great injustice.
Wants to raise awareness to his book.
Yeah, raise awareness, but he'll write another book while he's in prison.
He'll be the most highly paid prisoner in the world.
Yes,
like making that sweet money by being in prison.
Making that sweet folding money. Anyway. So
he wants that socks made of
so
silk
given that he's not going to need all that money, Tommy, if you're listening, you know what would get your supporters really fucking rock hard for you? Is if you gave some of that money to support the soldiers who you've put in that really difficult position that they're now being investigated by by Her Majesty's government. Tommy, that would be a class move from you. You would get so much social credit. Like, so many people would be wet for you and hard for you. I highly recommend you do that. I know you won't, because you're in it for the money, but that would look good.
I mean, do you know what else would be a really good way of spending that money?
What?
Buying land and property in Wales under my name. That would be great. And then I'll build a little commune, and then you'll never be allowed to visit.
And everyone will be white. And
nobody will be white.
Nobody will be white. I won't be living there.
Everybody will be of some foreign ethnicity.
Except you.
And female. Except me. And everybody will think it's some sort of weird, sex cult. But what it will actually be is just a really wholesome community. And you can come there and you can escape this world of white racism that you've created for yourself. You can escape it, Tom. You can literally just walk away from all of those fucking gammon-faced fucking skinhead pricks who you rely on for your money, and you can just come and hang out with a group of people who are really diverse and have lots of really interesting ideas, and and you can explore other cultures and realise how vast the tapestry of the world is when you don't just sit around hating everyone.
Not hating everyone, hating Pakistani pedophiles.
Right. Well, to be fair, I do hate pedophiles. No, I don't.
Hate's not the right word.
Hate's not the right word. Don't know what the right word is. I kind of feel sorry for them, really. Yeah. If their brains are genuinely wired the wrong way, so they are attracted to kids, that's a pretty fucking grim thing to live with.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are some schools of thought that argue that pedophilia is almost a form of sexual orientation, but giving it some thought, I don't it's a preference. It's not an orientation. It's
all right. Well, if it's a preference, then fuck them.
It's a bit like saying to use an extreme example, is it racist to not be sexually attracted to people of a different of a certain race? And I would argue no, because you have a set of sexual preferences of what you like.
I would argue that it's okay to be as shallow as you are, and maybe one day you'll be able to look past the surface.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of how I feel about people who bringing it back to trans for a moment, because there's this question of are you transphobic if when a person comes out to you as trans that they're no longer able to be with you? And I have mixed feelings about this, because if we're talking about if you personally are not able to work with what you've got.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're necessarily transphobic. I'd just say you're fucking shallow.
Well, also, no. Let me just put it like this: if you can't express your sexual desire for someone because of what's there,
right,
or isn't there, and that is.
Where are you going with this?
Oh, so if you're exclusively heterosexual,
right?
So let's say I'm an exclusive heterosexual, and I'm dating someone who I believe to be a woman,
right?
Right. Turns out that they're a trans woman, still a woman. Let's just clarify this, but still has a penis.
Big old floppy dick.
Right. And so what can we do to sexually
learn how to suck dick
sexually that I'm into, that I'm into as this exclusive hetero who
Like,
right.
My argument...
Sorry, is that... So am I transphobic for being like, actually, I'm not sure I can do this? Is that transphobic?
No, it's just shallow.
I wouldn't even use the word shallow, though.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, fine. You would. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Alright, that's fine.
Okay, so, like...
This isn't
like,
me,
you are
by the way.
attracted to who you're attracted to.
I agree.
Right? And what they've got between their legs shouldn't affect that.
It shouldn't, but let's not pretend that it doesn't.
It doesn't for me.
Then that's fine, but let's not pretend it doesn't.
Yeah, but my argument there would just be you're too shallow. Your brain,
I'm
like
not sure it's that simple.
You can't see beyond.
Actually, I don't know why I'm arguing this. Yes,
Yeah.
it is shallow. Sorry,
Of course it's shallow. What the fuck?
No, I've actually thought about this. Yeah, it's not that it's an ism or phobic. It's just you are shallow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, I can't have sex with someone who has a penis. All right. If that's the social structure that you're buying into, then go fucking head. But you are shallow. You're not.
You're right.
You're not necessarily phobic. You're just a dickhead.
I don't know why that took me so long to twig, but yes.
But like, yeah, it's just like, you know, it's like yeah, because you know, it's a very enlightening thing to come to the point where it doesn't matter what somebody looks like or what their body's like, because what their mind is like has an awful lot of impact. And I'm not saying
because of what you're into, what attracted you to them was not necessarily.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that like the way that they look doesn't have an impact, because it does. But like the way that they look and the way that interacts with how their mind works and what their personality like,
and
what
how
you
truly
fall in love with, right? And how you end up seeing them, and that is what you love, and that is what you're interested in. And if somebody comes out as trans, and you are no longer attracted to them, you were never in love with them in the first place, because you'd never got to the point where you saw that. All you saw was their image, and that was all you were in love with.
Yeah, but to be clear though, that isn't transphobic. It's just shallow.
I would say
yeah, but it isn't racist. If
okay, so let me put it this way: it's not transphobic, but that doesn't mean it's not right. It doesn't mean it's right. It's still not cool, right?
Okay.
They're still in a relationship with someone, and like it's still okay to fucking be annoyed with them and hate them, and like. But you have, like, for any trans people out there who have gone through that, well done, you dodged a bullet. Like, you know.
I mean, I'm sorry. On the flip side, and I'm acutely aware that there is also the possibility of when you come out as trans to a potential partner of receiving violence because of it. And I'm not trying. I'm not trying to belittle that at all. Just to be clear.
On the flip side, when somebody comes out as trans, sometimes their sexual preferences change, and sometimes they're shallow to the point where they're like, actually, do you know what? Like, I'm not interested in you anymore because, you know, I'm like I'm trans female.
I'm a straight trans female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because again, like this comes into a whole other thing. It's just like if you're realizing you're trans and you are transitioning, might not be the best time to cultivate a relationship, because you are literally changing an awful lot of who you are. You're discovering an awful lot of what you are going to become.
Yes.
You know, you're discovering who you really were meant to be, and you're not going to know who you're going to be attracted to until you've got to the end of that.
Yeah, and also how your partner's going to respond to the transition and change.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've already got a partner and you do know that you love them, then it might be worth trying, but just be prepared for failure.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, it's fair.
You know. Yeah.
And I can also, but though that said, I can also understand if you've gone through that transition, that once you've come out the other end of it, the desire to then explore that. Do you know what I mean?
No. Talk more.
As in, like, to then be single and to use a somewhat odd parlance, play the field.
Oh, what is in rediscover?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. That'd be down to the individual.
It would, but then would you call that shallow? Is my question.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay to be shallow.
Yeah,
it's just
a bit ridiculous.
Just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Just be honest about your own your shallowness. It's fine.
I think
playing the field is okay. Sleeping around is all right. People get hurt sometimes, but just try and be as honest as possible, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, be upfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually a good policy.
Just be upfront. Be honest.
I like you.
What is it?
I like you, Jake.
Be professional, be polite, and have a plan to kill everyone that you meet.
Yeah. Just kill everyone in the room at a moment's notice.
You got any more points? Because that would also be a great point to end.
I do.
Alright, let's keep going. I'm on a roll.
Toxic masculinity.
Ooh. Okay. Where are we starting with that?
Well, let's start with the definition.
Cool. That's a good place to start. Am I googling it?
I think I could do one. Toxic masculinity is basically a catch-all term used to describe negative traits that are considered hypermasculine that encourage things like the suppressing of emotion and the expression of emotion, discourage the discussion of emotion and someone else's emotional well-being, avoidance of things like nurturing things that are considered feminine. Do not use fucking...
No. Keep going. Let me do my fucking shtick.
Okay, right. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Do you want to hear Urban Dictionary's toxic masculinity definition?
Yes.
A social science term that describes narrow, repressive types of ideas about the male gender role and defines masculinity as exaggerated masculine traits like being violent, unemotional, sexually aggressive, and so forth. Also suggests that men who act too emotional and maybe aren't violent enough, or who don't do all the things that real men do, can get their man card taken away. Boom. Look, that's great. It's not great.
It's not great.
This was really bad.
It has grains of truth. Like, there's a reason that is there. And it's not someone hasn't put that there to troll everyone. Also, I would add, it's not a social science term.
Yeah. Anyway,
can we back on
topic.
Can we not lump anthropology into gender studies?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
we cannot do that.
Because gender studies is not the same thing. Gender studies is not a science.
I know.
Deal with it.
I know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So toxic
masculinity. Marriage is what brings us together today.
What he needs is to marry a woman who will calm him down.
The love of a good woman. Anyway, toxic masculinity. Now.
Oh. What was it? Like a little bit off topic, but Sage Francis, really good fucking rapper.
Yes.
One of his lines is like, "I'm a slow man looking for a slow woman who wants to slow dance." I like that. I like that. Yeah. Anyway, carrying on. Toxic masculinity.
End it. Credits.
I feel like I am out of any kind of like. I'm not sure if I'm sure I still do, but I feel like I don't have any of the trappings of toxic masculinity left.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. But like,
I mean, earlier on you were talking about like. It made me laugh when you mentioned it because I was like, funny enough, we're going to be bringing up toxic masculinity later.
Oh, what did I say?
Oh, you said something to do with like your manliness. Like it was a jokey statement.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Like I also.
I'm never going to stop making jokes about toxic masculinity.
Talking about how much of a fucking man I am.
Holy shit! Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was like, man. That was
okay.
Anyway,
so here is there is a good reason why I pointed out that anthropology and gender studies are not the same thing, and one is an actual science looking at cultural practices and and social sciences, and the other is a lot of kind of speculative interpretation stuff as far as I can see. Toxic masculinity I would classify as a lot of interpretive stuff that doesn't have a lot backing it, because I can't help but feel that what we call toxic masculinity today 100 years ago was called the British stiff upper lip, and it applied to everyone.
It didn't apply to everyone.
Yeah, it did.
It applied to the men.
No, women as well. Case in point, Jane Eyre's Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Invariably there are two female characters in most Jane Eyre novels, one of which is sensible and rational,
right,
and the other one is overly sentimental and irrational and emotional. And there's also a corresponding male character, Mr. Darcy, who is sensible and rational.
Right.
And has a deep reserve of feeling that they don't express, because if they loved you less, they'd say more. To quote Pride and Prejudice. So, yeah. So to like.
Okay.
Looking at it from a historical context, what we call toxic masculinity today is actually we've undergone some pretty rapid rapid transformations into assumed gender roles in the last 50 years. What we don't remember is that what we kind of forget because we weren't living it and we don't come from generations that were experiencing it is that back in the day, women worked. They worked hard jobs. Have we forgotten that women worked in cotton mills and a lot of them were on their own, having to source their own income? Right?
No, I don't.
You
remember
don't.
That.
You don't remember that?
No.
Okay. Well,
that is a thing.
That was a thing.
Okay.
As were children. Let's just be clear. On
yeah.
this.
Like it is like because I mean,
and
the argument could be made that there were still assumed gender roles within that work, the work that was given. Like a woman wouldn't be allowed to work a job that was considered, a man's work.
It's usually because they were physically incapable of doing it.
But like,
so
lawyer,
coal miner,
lawyer.
Oh, so now we're talking about the higher echelons of high society where this gender role thing did exist.
Okay,
but
clerk.
it didn't. Again, higher echelons of society.
All right. All right.
This idea of
fair enough.
of toxic masculinity, I would argue, is an exclusively middle class and upper class rationale concept that has been brought to the table after the fact and is as usual completely forgetting what it was like for the majority of society at the time that had absolutely no voice or representation.
All right. So what your argument is that? Oh, dude, oh.
Look, it's really bugging me. I need to get rid of it.
Oh my god. Okay, he's like picking skin off his feet, and I can't handle that, and that's my problem.
You know what I can't handle, Jake? Sound of you eating.
Do you know what, Matt? I've listened to you eating now because I paid attention to it, and I'm pretty sure the reason you don't like the way that I eat is because that's the way you eat.
Okay.
So.
That's fine.
Just accept it.
No, just to be clear, I accept your dislike of it and try to avoid eating around you.
No, I don't mind it. I don't care.
Oh, right.
I don't care. People need to eat, man.
Oh, so you feel because you've rationalised and understand why I dislike it, that means you don't have to factor it in.
No.
It's an interesting life
No.
Jake.
What I'm saying is your dislike of me eating is irrational and you should just not fucking pay attention to it.
Okay. Back on point. Toxic masculinity. Yeah, it's a as far as I can tell, it's a half-baked, half-cocked term that is used to describe things that, as far as I can tell, aren't like really considered in the proper context.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I think a lot of it has its roots in this idea of the British stiff upper lip, which in itself was a relatively new idea. Because 300 years ago, the French considered us too emotional.
Mm. Well, and about,
as a people,
1,000 years ago, we were French.
Yeah.
Well, we were ruled by the French.
Get out.
Normans.
How dare you?
Yeah. Well, because this is interesting, because you take it 1,000 years ago, you look 1,000 years ago when, we were Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah.
And again, everybody worked, and everybody fulfilled roles which were dependent on their ability, but So are you trying to say that these gender stereotypes have been born? I mean, Matt, are you trying to say that gender stereotypes come from the fact that we are unequal? We are not equal.
I'm saying that
we are not capable of doing certain jobs.
I'm saying that gender stereotypes are being weaponized in the very way that they accuse the converse of being weapons used to oppress people.
Oh, all right.
And that in reality.
So you don't think toxic masculinity is a thing?
Not in the way most people use it, no.
Okay.
And I would argue it's not toxic masculinity, it's aberrant negative behaviour that should be corrected, that you see in everyone.
Elaborate?
So it's a bit like saying autism is an exclusively male condition.
That's not, though.
Exactly.
Okay.
So is being unemotional an exclusively male condition?
Well, no.
Is not wanting to talk about one's feelings an exclusively male condition?
No.
Right.
No.
So why are we calling that thing toxic masculinity rather than just toxic? Seriously.
Okay. I don't know.
Because it is being weaponised. My point.
Alright.
That's it, really.
I'm outie. I'm avoiding this.
You really are.
Yeah. I don't want it. I don't want that argument.
Okay.
I don't want it in my life.
Okay.
Like, yeah. Just, I don't know. Dude, that's going to come up on the fucking mic and you're really going to piss me off. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Alright. I'll engage. There is lads culture.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide in young men is higher than it is in young women.
Okay.
Quite a lot higher.
Right.
A lot of that is down to men being unable to express their emotions or feeling like they can't seek out help and they'll appear weak if they do.
Okay.
That is a thing.
Okay.
Right?
I'm,
You with me so far?
I'm listening, yes.
I personally feel like that is what people refer to when they're referring to like toxic masculinity. The idea of being unable to express one's emotions because one is perceived to be masculine or effeminate if one does express their emotions.
Okay.
But like, and what do you mean when you say it's being weaponized? So if it's being weaponized, then it must be it's used as a weapon to achieve what goal?
The delegitimization and stigmatization of one group over another.
So the delegitimization of men. Is that what it's being used for?
A specific group of men.
What's the specific group of men?
Men who are not hardline feminists.
Okay. So.
Apathetic men.
Right.
Because
So,
if you're apathetic, you're part of the problem.
but if they're apathetic, why do they give a fuck?
So what do you mean?
As in, like, why would they care if somebody says that they're toxic? You know, their masculinity is toxic. Like,
Why would they care?
yeah.
Because they're being told that they are toxic. So why would they care? Why would they care that they're being called a pejorative for not being hardline enough? Or not
But I'm
caring
not. I'm
enough?
not a hardline feminist, and I don't feel like toxic masculinity applies to me.
You've never had that accusation thrown at you.
What, being toxically male?
Yeah.
No.
You don't think that because you're large and big, people are scared of you because of that. That's part of that.
What do you mean?
You said earlier that, because you're 6'5",
Yeah.
and built like a brick shit house,
Yeah.
people are automatically scared of you.
Sometimes, not always.
Because there is this, perception of large men
Right.
who, mighty warriors,
Right.
and that's considered really masculine and manly.
Right.
So they should be scared of you.
Right. Well, I don't think it's necessarily like they're not scared of me because they consider me masculine or manly. They're scared of me because they are worried that a man is going to hurt them, and they look at me and they go, I couldn't escape him if he wanted to hurt me.
Right.
I think that's why people get scared,
Fair.
and not everybody does, because not everybody automatically assumes a man's going to hurt them. It's usually only people who have already been hurt or people who have been exposed to it. And I wouldn't say that's got anything to do with toxic masculinity or whether or not I am toxically male.
See, the thing is this. I suppose this is more my point. I find the term toxic masculinity a very difficult one to kind of then have a discussion about, because as soon as you say that, there is kind of no denying that. Whereas as I've tried to kind of highlight, what you're referring to as toxic masculinity has a very rich tapestry and history, which isn't as gendered as you seem to be representing it as.
Okay.
And I think you're going to have a far better way of arguing a point if you frame it properly in its historical context. So what you're actually arguing against is not toxic masculinity. You're arguing against the normalization of
repressing one's emotions.
Yes.
Okay.
Which has got nothing to do with gender. It's got everything to do with our history.
So I guess there is this like assumption in the media or at the moment that women don't suppress their emotions and men do. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying that the way debates and discussions regarding masculine and feminine traits tend to completely ignore the historical context as to why they exist in the first place. You just have a far better way of helping people kind of understand that narrative if you framed it in its correct historical context. I'll give an example. The headscarf. Now you could just say, oh, it's a tool to oppress women, and it's used in Islamic majority countries to oppress women. You could just say that, right? But then when you put it in its proper historical context, you say, oh, it originates in...
Prevent the sun from burning your face.
No, it originates in it's Syrian practice. Literally, there was a king who, by modern day standards, would be classified as a progressive.
Right.
Right. When he died, his son took over, and his son completely changed all those reforms and progressive reforms he made, and took away all the rights of women to own property, the right to self-autonomy. There was equality in education. Like I said, this guy, the father would have been considered a progressive.
Yeah.
He reversed all that and then started saying things like women must be veiled, and if you're not veiled, you're like a prostitute or something like that. And that's where the practice of veiling comes from. It has nothing to do with the Abrahamic faith or what God said. In the cultural context of the veiling of women, that was the origin of that. And guess where that was? In the Middle East. Where were all the Abrahamic faiths born? The Middle East. So that cultural practice translated over into religious practices of most faiths there, because it's not just the Abrahamic faith. Every other faith in that area also started adopting it. Because guess what? The Syrians were really fucking big. And had a massive impact on that theatre. So now we understand that the veiling of women is actually an old... Wow, that picture came up again through 8,000. So the veiling of women is actually a cultural practice in that area. It's got very little to do with religion, so we don't really need to have a discussion about religious texts and respecting that. We just need to accept the fact that that's the origin of that cultural practice and get over it.
Right. But it nonetheless does oppress women.
It's used now. That's a byproduct.
But it was used then as well.
Oh yeah.
So it has consistently been used to oppress women.
No, because the argument is that you're arguing against religion. You're preventing people from practicing their religion. No.
Wait. So the argument to... So I'm struggling to see which side you're trying to land yourself on here.
What? Is it... side of what?
So are you saying that it's okay to argue to get rid of headscarves because it has nothing to do with the religion, and you're not arguing against the religion, you're arguing against oppression? No. Or are you saying... yeah. I'm
saying that if you have a discussion, if you're going to have this discussion on whether or not, regarding the veiling of women, you need to start by putting it in its proper context. Right. So when people say things like, well, this is how I practice my faith, you then need to start looking at, but why is that a cultural practice for that faith?
Right.
Not, okay then.
Okay.
And this is not me saying you should ban headscarves. I'm just saying, if you're trying to have a discussion with someone about, anything, whether it's toxic masculinity, gender identity, and all this shit, whatever it is,
you've got to recognise its origins.
You need to take it back to a frame of reference which you can all kind of agree on.
You've got to recognise its origins.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think I don't.
And you say that toxic masculinity's origins is the British stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip, yeah.
Okay. And your argument is...
And
it's
Jane
not
fucking
masculine.
Eyre. I actually squarely blame Jane Eyre for
this. And your argument is it's not masculine, it's everyone.
No.
So it is predominantly male.
It's both.
It is both. So everybody is equally culpable.
No, not equally.
So
though.
It's toxic stiff upper lip is what you're arguing.
Everyone is equally, both genders are equally likely to have autism. No! Both genders can have it though, can't they?
Okay. Okay. But it is predominantly male.
But as I said earlier, is it correct to say that autism is a male condition? No. So is this behaviour toxic, a masculine condition? No.
Okay.
Because gender norms have changed, are transitory.
But it is safe to say that it is predominantly male.
Okay, so saying that it affects a predominant is different to implying that because it affects mostly men, it is a masculine attribute. That's a different thing.
Yeah, but I guess it would be like man flu.
Yeah.
So man flu is a type of flu that has been proven to recognisably proven to affect men worse than it does women.
Right.
But women still get it, but men suffer more
flu.
because of it.
Like, it's when men get the flu, they experience worse symptoms.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
just be clear. It's
It's
not special virus.
So let's just say so we call it man flu, right? So I feel like maybe we can recognise that stiff upper lip toxicity, when experienced by men, is a lot more. It affects them a hell of a lot more than it affects women, and so thereby calling it masculine toxicity, we can just assume that it's of a similar trend to man flu.
No, it's not that it affects men more.
And not get so fucking butthurt.
But it's not that it affects men more.
I think it does.
Okay, fine.
I think it does.
That's not me saying that men don't do it more. They do, but that's not the same as saying it affects them more. Because this goes back to my point of you're assigning the attribute as if it's a gendered attribute, as opposed to an attribute whose prevalence varies depending on what societal gender norms are at the time. So, back in the day, referring back to Jane Eyre, bringing it back to Jane Eyre for a moment.
Oh my God, that's just a book, Matt. It's fucking fiction.
Jane Eyre was the author.
Yeah, one woman. It's not representative of the entire
I'm culture. Sorry, Jake. Do we not look at literature of a time to understand that period of time?
Yeah, but
do we not do that?
One book.
Do we not accept that there are things that have huge cultural impacts at that point in time? And I'm sorry, is Jane Eyre not exactly that? Because she fucking is.
Yeah, but it's one book.
And it's one book that I am using as a single example.
Exactly.
Because you know Jane Eyre.
Right.
Whereas if I talk to you about Emily Wollstonecraft, you'll have no fucking clue who I'm talking about.
Alright.
Okay.
Let's talk about
so do we now understand that me using that was using an example that everyone is familiar with?
Why are you shouting at me?
Because you're
Why are you shouting at me? Why are you being so mean?
Because I don't...
Are you expressing your toxic masculinity?
I don't understand what is so difficult about this.
You're being so toxically masculine, Matt.
Am I?
Yeah, you are.
Or am I just annoyed at your bullshit?
No, you are. You feel like being louder, you'll be able to put your point across more, and that is it.
No, because you kept interrupting me with that stupid fucking speech.
That is a prime example of toxic masculinity.
Okay,
and
fine.
I feel like you're so in the middle of it that you just can't see the forest for the trees.
You're right. Castrate me now.
Look, what I'm trying to say, man, is it's fucking stupid getting butthurt about what it's called.
Is that what this is? Is this me butthurt?
No, but
So fuck you.
It's such a pointless argument.
No, it's not.
It's such a pointless thing to get to take on as a cause.
Actually, hang on, wait. First of all, let's say that it is pointless. What do you think the rest of this fucking podcast has been? Because I would also argue pointless.
No.
What is everything that we've said on this podcast ultimately pointless?
No.
And you suddenly decide to bring that hammer down on this one?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because, man. Because there's a lot of people out there who are going to get very, very, very upset with the idea of you taking the idea of toxic masculinity, which is kind of tied in with the feminist movement and about equal rights for men and women and for recognizing that both genders should be treated equally and should have equal opportunities, and that is a very small aspect of that wider kind of arcing goal and movement, and you are focusing on that one tiny bit and going, yeah, but it's not about men. It's not all men though. It's not about all men. It's not just about men.
Oh,
and it's alright, yeah, it's not. Who fucking cares?
Thank you for framing that in a way that allows you to reference a fucking meme counter. I'm so fucking glad that you felt able to do that, despite the fact it's wholly inappropriate and doesn't actually apply. But I'm glad that you felt able to shoehorn that in.
Shoehorn what in? Sorry.
that it's not that what I'm actually doing here is an argument that's not all men.
All right. Okay.
Which is not what I'm doing.
All right. Not just men.
Not what I'm doing. See,
That's exactly what you
actually haven't been listening.
It's not just men.
No, I'm saying that to assign it a gendered, to say that it's a gendered attribute is misleading and ultimately faulty. And if you actually want to consider yourself a science, you need to really start thinking about how you use terms and categorize things, because quite often they're very misleading.
Yeah, but toxic you've already established that toxic masculinity has nothing to do with science. You've already established.
Yeah,
gender.
Yeah, and my method of refuting that is exactly this, which you seem to be struggling with.
No, but you started all of this with like gender studies isn't science, and yeah, okay, whatever, that's fine. But then you're getting really mad that the things that are said within gender science aren't scientific, and I'm like, all right, yeah, but they're not gonna be.
And I'm framing it in an anthropological sense.
So are you arguing that gender science should be scientific?
I'm arguing that if you want to make the argument that if you want to frame certain behaviours in a certain way, you need to be very careful as to how you do it.
Right.
Which is why I disagree with the term toxic masculinity, because it doesn't.
It
doesn't do it well.
I'm all for calling it upper lip toxicity.
Stiff upper lip.
No, upper lip toxicity or stiff lip.
You know what?
Stiff lip. Toxic stiff lip.
Look, man. We've used the term. Look, man. We've used the term toxic in our daily conversations plenty of times, and we've both known exactly what the fuck we mean. Like, we're talking about toxic personality traits that are fucking anathema to being a stable person,
right?
Or being like an emotionally supportive or happy individual.
Cool, right? And that is everyone. Yeah.
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 Right.
Agree.
So what we're actually talking about here is toxic behaviour.
Cool.
We don't need to gender it.
All right. Cool.
So let's just call it toxic.
I stiff upper lipism.
I hate you. I mean, I don't. I'm a little bit aroused right now. I've got a major hate bone right now. So hate fucking.
Stiffalism. No. Lipistiffilibers.
Tom
Bombolismism. Oh, look, like, I keep fucking hitting you in the face. He just sat there for the last 30 seconds, putting a pillow above his head and falling on his face and just repeating the action that by somehow doing the same action he wouldn't get the same outcome. And it was beautiful. And I'm glad you don't hate me.
Me too.
But like, I feel like the angle of just saying like yeah, there are toxic kind of like attitudes and toxic behaviours which prevent you from being a stable human being, and that is what the people are referring to when they talk about toxic masculinity.
Is it?
It's not just about masculinity.
Is it though?
Well, maybe not. But like, that's what you feel people are referring to when they're talking about toxic masculinity. It's a much better angle to go at it than like the stiff upper lipism.
No, because I put it in the proper context. This is why I now think it's toxic rather than a masculine trait. I had to explain why that is.
All right.
Because this wasn't this stiff upper lip was not a gendered concept. It was expected of the entirety of British society across every social strata.
Yeah, which like that could genuinely be seen as the origins of man up.
And I would argue, toxic.
Yeah, but stiff upper lip, right?
Yeah.
Turned into man up, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we gendered it way before toxic masculinity was a thing.
Who was expected to have the stiff upper lip? Definitely changed. Yes. Yeah. But I wouldn't call it toxic masculinity. I'd just call it toxic behaviour. Because if you call it toxic masculinity, you get definitions like that on Urban Dictionary, where it says that it's actually a false veiled attack on manliness.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, like, because if you're looking at the historical context of it, stiff upper lip was something that was expected of men. It was desired in women. It
was expected in women as well. That's why I bring up Jane Eyre.
But like, when men didn't have a stiff upper lip, they were considered cowardly. But when women didn't have it, they were just considered frivolous.
Frivolous.
Or like...
They were considered
flighty.
unattractive and unwanted.
Really?
Yeah. Again, Jane Eyre.
Yeah, but...
What do you mean, yeah, but?
Alright. Have you got any more points? Was that it?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
You think you're done?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. Shit. I really wish I'd...
Mostly in the sense that I'm tired.
Oh no, buddy! We're gonna end this. This is gonna be the first podcast that we end on like a downer.
Why?
Because like you shouted at me, and now you're like, I'm done. I'm tired, and like, that's a bit of a downer.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to be a downer.
Well, I mean, like
we've invented stiff upper lipism.
The more
we should feel good about.
The more times you say we've ended on a downer, the more you kind of speak it into existence. To be honest with you, man, I don't really feel down.
Oh, okay.
You do though.
I thought you were down.
Okay.
It seems like you're a little bit down.
No, just this last part was exhausting.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm exhausting.
Well, okay.
But that is what all women say. So.
Yeah. They do. I believe that's what then went on to inspire Mark Zuckerberg to found Facebook.
What did?
That the girl he was with found him exhausting.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah.
Well,
I don't know anything about Mark Zuckerberg.
According to the film Social Network, anyway, which you should take with a pinch of salt. Anyway,
I always will. So, final thoughts? Stip upper lipism. It's the new name.
It is okay to let go of people who are toxic, who rob you of your energies, and you find it very difficult to be around them, and they are forever taking your energies but never energize you. It is an important life skill to recognise this in those around you, so that you can lead a happier, more fulfilling life. And although I am mentally drained right now because of this little exchange, will you let me finish?
Alright.
Because I am mentally drained right now because of my exchange with Jacob, he nonetheless energises me extremely. And this is but a blip.
Will you let me finish?
Will you let me finish my final point? Literally what this is called. The final point.
It's not your final point though, it's our final point. And I had a final point to add to that.
Okay.
I was going to be like, nonetheless, it's okay for your friends to occasionally drain you, because that's the back and forth of it.
Right.
So literally
the last caveat that I ended on.
Yeah, but I wanted to say it because this is a two-way podcast, and I thought it'd be cool if we switched and swapped, and that's what we normally do. But then no, it's my thing. I want to say it. I want to say the words.
Yeah, because I was sick and tired of you interrupting earlier with fucking inane shit that wasn't even my point to begin with.
Oh, okay, all right. In which case, I guess my final point would be
derailing me, Jake.
I guess my final point would be that.
See, it's really fucking annoying, isn't it? Right?
That's not what I was doing. I guess my final point.
Shut me down!
I can do this all day. I guess my final point. I guess my final point would be.
Always got a final point. Always, so you're saying that. It's annoying, right?
That's not what I was doing.
You guess your final point is.
I guess my final point would be that sometimes. I guess my final point would be that sometimes, very, very rarely, there comes a point in someone's life where they have to get out of the ghetto! Get out of the ghetto! And by ghetto I mean, the emotional trap of toxic friends. And I'm desperately trying to be serious, but I really can't manage it at this moment. So step up a lipism. That is now totally a thing.
We didn't end on a downer.
Matt, you are a downer.
It's true.
No, it's not. I love you.
Oh, I love you too.